it's a love story in a way. This woman really loved her husband. It's about flawed characters. It's about healing. It's about relationships in general. And everybody in this book, who's a main character, has something that needs kind of a resolution in some way.
Hello, 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 and welcome back to the My Future Business Show. You know what? I love getting away with my family and friends occasionally. I don't do it too often, but when I do, I just love to relax and just spend time with them. But I tell you what, I was very hungry to get back to you today because I love podcasting. Now, on today's show, I have the pleasure of welcoming producer and author Jennifer Manocherian to talk about her novel, Alpha Bette. Now, during this content-rich call, Jennifer and I will be taking a deep dive into the book, and we're going to explore how writing a book is different from screenwriting. So with that all being said, Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, look, it's an absolute pleasure to
and
have
now
you.
I want to know where did you go on vacation?
I actually went to a place called Gawler. It's Goolwa. There's two ends to the spectrum there, and it's kind of a coastal town. And it's we go cabining. We don't camp or use tents or anything like that. There's these beautiful sort of luxury sort of villas, if you like, and they're on the seafront, and they're so beautiful. Just you know what I mean. Just put your feet up for a while and just do a whole heap of nothing all at once.
Well, that's called glamming, right?
Yes, absolutely. That's what we were doing. Now, tell me a little bit about you, Jennifer. Where are you calling in from today?
Well, I live in New York. I live outside of New York, about half hour outside of New York City. And I have lived here for I've lived in the East Coast all my life. So I am a East Coast person.
Now, tell me a little bit. I know that a lot of people who have never been to New York always think that New York is nothing more than concrete and steel. I know that there's much more than that. Tell us a little bit about the environment outside of the main city.
Oh, outside of the main city.
Yeah.
New York is more than concrete. It has a life force. It's a life force.
Yes.
New York City. It's exciting.
Yep.
And I've loved New York City. Living outside the city, I live in the suburbs. It's not. I don't know if I don't know if I am a suburban person at heart. Maybe I would be probably better in country.
Yep.
With cows and horses and pastures and stuff. But
Yep.
I live in a suburb, which is fine. I mean, I love where I live. It's nice. I have 2 dogs who roam around, and I have cats. And
Yep.
in fact, when my kids were young, which is a very long time ago, we had everything. We had goats, we had chickens, we had just about every kind of pet that a family could have. We had rodents, you name it, we had it. It was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember growing up on a farm, very similar situation. We had ferrets. We would go rabbiting, and it was so grounding, wasn't it?
Oh, I love it. One of my daughters she actually has a real farm. She has llamas, she has cows. The cows give birth. They have bulls. It's fun.
Yes.
Yes, I love that. There's a part of me that wishes I was born was a pioneer woman and was milking the cows and getting the eggs in the morning. I mean, that would have been fun.
Yeah, no, well, I can recall, mushroom picking down our driveway and, doing the eggs and all the rest of the things that you've just spoken about. You've just triggered some memories of mine that, they seem long lost, don't they, until we start talking about them again.
No, city life, there's a lot of ways of living. And actually, this is kind of rambling off subject, but when I was a kid, we had a home in a place called Rockport, Massachusetts, which is like the easternmost part of the United States.
Right.
And it was it was fishing and it just the kind of the life. I mean, you live in Australia, maybe it's different, but today in the United States, which has got a lot of problems going on and violence, and this whole issue of kids biking and kind of happy childhood and normal apple pie life is kind of very hard to find anymore unless you get really, really far from a city. And even then, you just never know.
Yeah. No, well, I have to agree with you. I remember growing up, we used to have hammocks outside the main farmhouse where we were growing up, and we would sleep out the front on the hammocks.
Oh, that's neat.
And we would have people that we didn't know just roaming up and down the street, but they would know your name. Nowadays, you would never find that, would you?
No, not only that, but I don't think you would do that anymore.
No, you definitely wouldn't.
Although I have a hammock on my second floor porch, which I made into
beautiful.
like a little house for my cats where they can be outside without being outside.
I love it.
And I try to sleep there at night sometimes. It's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Now tell me about your pets. I'm a big pet lover.
Okay. Well, I have two dogs, which are rescue dogs. They come from Texas, which is a story that's too long. It'll fill your whole podcast. But they were rescue dogs. That one of them actually was flown in on a private plane.
Oh, really?
Because there are private plane pilots who volunteer to transport rescue animals all across the United States.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so it was pretty fantastic. And my other one came on a long bus. But in this, I don't know. Again, I don't know the different culture in your country, but it's much better to adopt if you can, rather than to get a full breed.
And here's a secret: we have two pedigree dogs, but also a rescue.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
we appreciate it.
Yeah, we've had it all. And my cats actually, I had two other cats who were rescues who died a couple of years ago. And we had a very hard time during COVID adopting another cats. And I have to have animals. I mean,
Yes.
I just feel like they just make my life better. And we had a very hard time being able to find what we wanted. There were so many people who wanted animals during that time.
Yep.
And so anyhow, we wound up buying a couple of amazing cats. They're Egyptian Mau. And I can only say that they're the fastest cat there is.
I can imagine. Look, I know from a therapeutic standpoint that people of all ages, of all backgrounds, have this natural, innate connection with animals. They don't speak, but they can speak with their eyes, can't they?
No, they're soulful and they care about you and they don't judge you.
Yes.
They're very empathetic. You're right. I mean, if you're suffering, they somehow sense it.
Yep. And they come down to the energy level that you give them for sure and certain. Now, tell me, beyond the love of your pets, what do you like to do with yourself? Do you have any hobbies? Do you do anything like that?
Well, yes, I do. But I also have to mention I have a large family. I don't want to say like my animals are the only thing in my life.
Of course, yes.
I have 5 adult children and I have 15 grandchildren, and they're certainly a very important part of my life. And I love to read. I love to go to movies. I knit constantly. My husband is a television watcher, so at night while he watches, if I'm not interested, I knit. And I do quite a lot of what you call charity knitting.
Right.
I make bears for children, and I make cancer caps. And I mean, I am unfortunately I'm cursed. I don't know if cursed or blessed. I don't know the right word. With having to be busy all the time.
Yep.
It's not. I mean, I can if I go somewhere to relax, I can really let go.
Yep.
But it's like I have 2 speeds: full speed and no speed.
And no speed.
But I have my. I mean, there's never. I never have enough time in a day for all the things that I love to do.
And you know what? I think given the love of family above and beyond anything else, you wouldn't trade it for the world, would you?
No, I wouldn't. I mean, I understand people who feel like children don't fit into their lives, but when I married, I was very young.
Yep.
And I turned 21 in the hospital with my first child, and it was a whole different era.
Yeah.
And by the time I was 27, I had 4 children, and I also had a nephew living with us. So essentially, I had 5 children until I actually gave birth to my 5th child. And, we just didn't think about it. I wanted a large family. I couldn't be any happier that I have all my children.
So let's go back a little step further. I want to explore your childhood. Now, tell me, do you have a fond memory that you can share with us? We talked about your farm and all the rest of it. What's one thing out of all of that you recall?
My childhood. Wow. Now we're really going back far.
Oh.
I tell you, what I'm going to mention is we lived in a house. I don't know how much acreage we had, maybe a couple of acres.
Yep.
And at the end of the lawn that we had, my mother had a vegetable garden, and during World War II, she had what's called a victory garden. And so we had a very nice vegetable garden. And beyond that was a woods. And unfortunately, you can imagine what happens these days. Now, I think it's like all housing,
Yep.
Land like that gets grabbed up. But it was a wonderful woods, and it had a brook in it, and it had a well in it. And the funniest thing happened a couple of years. The well was like, it wasn't like a well that, with the chain and you look down, and it was
Yes,
like
yes.
it was like a hut.
Yep.
And it was a little bit creepy. And my younger sister told me a couple of years ago, and I never knew this, that she thought Hitler lived inside that well.
Oh,
I mean, I was shocked that she would have thought that, but we were very young, and people, there was a lot of rah-rah stuff, patriotic songs and
yes.
stuff going on.
Yep.
And I guess you heard something about Hitler. So she had decided Hitler was in the well.
Uh,
Well, that woods was like my playground. I had so much fun in that woods. And we
yeah.
used to go, and there was a railroad track, and there was a tunnel underneath it, and we would put pennies on the railroad track, and then we would go into the tunnel, wait for the train to go over it, and then find our pennies. It was great.
Yeah, you know what? This is the reason that I love stories so much. It's because it brings out a completely different side to our being, and it reveals just a little bit about ourselves, doesn't it?
It does. Well, I hadn't thought about that in a long time. It's how do you pick it? If that was a question you asked me in advance, I would have prepared something in
No.
my mind. So it became just, whatever, that woods just came to me.
Yep, yeah, absolutely wonderful. And this is the thing I think is fundamentally different about the My Future Business Show. So I really do appreciate you sharing. Now, tell me a little bit about the people that were around you that had an influence on the person that you've become today. Was there anybody like that?
Well,
Aunties, uncles, parents?
my parents, my parents were both influences on me in different ways. And it's interesting because my parents were in their mid-90s when they died.
Right.
And I don't think anything was thrown away ever. So when I went through their apartment that they lived in, I found all these diaries my mother had written from like 1915 into the 70s. I mean, it was almost, I still haven't read it all.
Like a
But
daily thing.
so I found out a lot about myself that was like the same thoughts that my mother was having that I never really attributed to my mother, because I've always had a certain drive. And I thought it was because I never felt like I could meet my father's approval. My father was, it's almost like a negative thing you're talking about, but my
Mm.
father was, he very well educated, very smart, Englishman, who kind of felt, he once said to me, "There's nothing I can know that you don't know," which was a pretty awful thing for a parent to say. But my father, I always, at least I know my sisters feel like I lived to kind of live up to some standard of my father. I don't think that. In fact, it wasn't until after my mother's death that I realized the extent to which she influenced me,
Yeah.
and kind of my kind of just need to be always meeting some kind of an internal standard. And my parents also had we lived in a very conventional suburban neighborhood, and there wasn't a big mix of people.
Yep.
And my parents had friends who were like outside. They had friends who were actors and different people. And I always loved differences. And even having an English father made me different within our community.
Mm.
So one of the ways in which I think was interesting to me, I've always been interested in stories like you are, and in differences, people who are different. I never I've never fit into one groove.
No. Yeah.
And
You're
in fact, my husband's Iranian. And he lived in Iran until he was about 14. So he was pretty well formed.
Yeah.
That doesn't go away.
No, absolutely not. Look, tell me a little bit about, on the flip side of things, we've talked about people that have influenced you in your life. I'm wondering, given your large family, what do you think that you've imparted on your own children and your grandchildren that will be a legacy for you?
Well, I think I've become, I say this, it sounds very immodest. I don't like tooting my own horn. And I really attribute a lot of it to the kind of energy I have, because I feel like my mother, there was a DNA, some kind of a little crazy religious, not religious, relentless drive.
Yes.
And I do, I'm kind of tireless. And so I attribute a lot of the fact that I'm in my mid-80s and I'm still evolving. That may sound ridiculous, but this year I filmed a movie. As I was both a producer and a writer on it, a co-producer and a co-writer on it. And it was
Yep.
something I've been working on for years, but we filmed that movie. That was one thing I've done this, and oh my God, it's been like a year of learning for me at my age. I also wrote a book that's published and is all over the place. I've had to learn how to market a book. So it's like I feel like I've been learning in all different directions: how to publish, how to market, and how to produce a movie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the way in which I may influence my children and I also teach. And I'm sorry, I just got to take a
No,
little
absolutely. No, it's fine.
I feel like I've become a role model for old age, where as long as you're healthy and you have the energy, there's nothing to stop you.
It's just a number.
It isn't just a number, because listen, your body tells you in many ways how old you are. You wake up in the morning, it's a little harder.
Yep.
There's ways in which you become more limited, but I think your biggest limitation is in your head. There was a time for me when I would, particularly with writing the book, that one of the choices I made with my book was to publish it through a hybrid publisher rather than trying to get an agent and do that more legitimate process.
Yep.
Because I felt that would take me years, and and I'm also kind of controlling. And in self-publishing, you have control over your title, your cover. There's a lot of ways in which you have control.
Yep.
So I got a hybrid publisher who only accepts like 15% of submissions. So I felt there was a selection process. It wasn't just like I just did it. And they were very helpful to me. But what I want to say is that, it's funny, I have a salt thing here. In a way, I've kind of been very aware of the sand in the hourglass and how many grains there are left.
Yes.
And that does impact you. And there was a time when I was few years ago where I kept thinking about those grains that were up there and feeling like I shouldn't keep going because it's ridiculous. And then I did a mental shift. And I decided, what the hell, as long as excuse my language.
No, that's fine.
As long as I'm feeling good and I'm energized and I have ideas and things I want to do, why should I stop?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
No, but I did have a mental block. Yeah, I mean, I did have a block, but I feel like I looked at maybe do my kids feel like I shortchanged them? Well, I started working when my youngest child, I was about 34 when she was born.
Mm-hmm.
And I started working then, but it was just like one foot out the door. I didn't work full time at that time. Yep. I became a family therapist. I mean, I actually had to get I didn't finish college. I had gone to Barnard and I didn't finish, and I didn't get my undergraduate degree till the same year I had my youngest child. And then I got a master's degree, and then I started working, and I became a family therapist, and then I did divorce mediator. And everything I did, I was also trying to be super mom. So, I tried to fit it. I hope my children don't feel like I shortchanged them. To this day, I try to be there for everybody for anything that they need.
That they need, yeah.
Provider. But I'm also, I think I'm a good model that way too, because I am very available, but I also, I also have my own interest in the things that interest me in my life.
And I think this is why podcasts and video podcasts especially are a great way to create a record of how you felt about your family and the things that you've tried to do for them. So I really do appreciate you sharing. Now, tell me a little bit about your day, Jennifer. Are you an early riser, and what's the day look like for you typically?
Well, I am not an early riser. I am a I have to wake up with an alarm, to be honest with you, because I probably would sleep 9.5 hours if I didn't set my alarm. I don't know, for whatever reason. Maybe it's because I go to sleep late. I don't know, but I just am not. I usually get up around 8:30.—
Yep.
And I sometimes I will have well, I teach. Sometimes I'll have like a 9:30 appointment or something I have to do at that time. And
Yep.
my day, I would say my work day, so to speak, begins at 9:30 because I have breakfast with my husband.
Mm.
And then most of the rest of the day, I mean, to be honest with you, if I don't have things that I have to do, I write. I mean, I'm not somebody who needs to be motivated. I'm very self-motivated.
Hmm.
And right now, actually, I have a second book that I'm dying to write, and I just don't get. I'm not getting the time because between the movie and marketing my book and teaching and other things that happen during the course of the day, I'm just not getting the block of time I need.
Right.
Um, I don't. But I mean? Typically in a day, I I'm really attending to a lot of these things. The movie, I mean, it sounds odd, but the movie always has things. I mean, like it sounds really superficial, but I mean, one of the things we're trying to do right now, we're finishing putting in the titles so we can lock the picture.
Yep.
And what I mean, the end credits is what I mean.
Yep.
And like, who am I thanking? I mean, this is ridiculous. Like, it's not like a huge problem, but I don't know. Who
You're
are the
very busy.
who? Well, I am. I mean, my day just doesn't stop,
It's
and
a good thing, but I guess there's a difference between being busy and productive. Do you know the difference between the two, and can you recognize it?
well, I feel that I'm not always productive, but I'm pretty productive. I'm always
Likewise.
busy. I'm always busy. Am I always productive? I don't. Well, nobody's. I think I like an end product to my time. That's why I like gardening. That's why I like cooking.
Yes,
That's,
yes.
I mean, I feel like I'm pretty productive.
Yep. Do you like? Do you have a particular meal that you like to cook? Is there a favorite?
Oh, well, I have in my kids, everybody, most of my, except for one of my grandchildren right now does not live in the area, but the rest of them, everybody lives nearby.
Yep.
And every Sunday for years it's like open house for our family. And sometimes they'll want to bring friends, whatever. And they always want to have Persian food, which is easy for me to do.
Mm.
It could be, I wait, and they don't tell me if they're coming or not. I mean, it's like one of my kids said to me, Mom, if I have to tell you, then figure we're not coming. And I thought, well, no, I'll just prepare it. What the heck? So I'll cook for like 20, 25 people. And if they don't all come or if nobody comes, then more for us, right?
Yep. Yep.
And so it's been years that we've done that. And now it's like, I mean, I've got a couple of married grandchildren. I've got kids who are, adult grandchildren. They have their own lives, but people always show up. I mean, it's really nice. And sometimes they'll bring friends. Sometimes they'll ask if they can bring friends. Sometimes the doorbell will ring, and I have to be very careful to say, "Oh, I didn't know you were coming." But I cook. But I do cook that, and I also all my grandchildren. It's like they require me to cook something. It's funny. Yesterday we were talking about the semantics of it. They have something called chicken tenders, which is just that little.
I'm aware of it.
Okay. So we call it chicken cutlets, but that's probably not the right term. But there's a way I make the chicken tenders that it's like required every Sunday. So that's that. I always cook that. I always have some form of rice. And yesterday I made cocoa bat. I mean, I make different things.
Different things for different events. Now, I'd like to talk about love. Can I cut in on this? Because what I'm getting from you is that you are surrounded by love. How important is it in this world that we embrace love and we share more of it?
Well, I'm just very blessed. I mean, I am. I put the time in, and you have to do your own part too.
Yep.
But yes, I feel badly for people who don't have that in their lives. And so anyway, I do agree with you. It's very nice.
Oh, absolutely. I know that you do a lot of different things to support and contribute to community, and I've seen a lot of the information on your websites, and I will be sharing that with everybody a little bit later on in this call. But I want to know, out of all of the things, all of the skill sets that you have, Jennifer, what do you think the one thing is that you do the best, above and beyond everything else? Is there a thing?
I don't know. I mean,
Hard to say.
I feel like, the master, jack of all trades, master of none.
Yep,
I
yep.
don't feel like, it's not like I'm a great pianist. I don't feel like I'm a great anything. I just do a lot. And I don't worry about, I love trying different things. I don't worry about failing.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have
There's
an
not
answer
one.
to that.
No,
Like
that's fine.
but I do like to write, but I write in different forms. I love writing, but I've written a book of a couple of musicals, and we're working on another one right now. I love collaborating. I
Right.
really do. It's so much fun working with other people on something, if it's the right people. But and also, I mean, even in my writing, I have to say it's always very family centered. I mean, if the book that I've written is all about, it's an old woman in the small circle that's her life at the end of her life, but it's
Yep.
family and it's people close to her. And I feel like probably everything I do, that kind of filters in the whole idea of the value of family in life.
It's interesting you say that because before I guess the entertainment business, you were a family therapist. Tell us a little bit about that part of your life.
Well, a family therapist, you don't just look at the individual, you look at the individual within a family system.
Yeah.
It's kind of a multi-generational view of people, so that if a kid is having a problem, you're going to want to see the family too. And I did it for a number of years, but what happened was that I don't know what would have happened if I had had the right degree, but I didn't have I was on faculty at a training institute, but
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have even been led into that program because my master's degree was
Not
not
the
a
right one.
degree. Yeah, and I couldn't get when people are in therapy, they want to get insurance for it, and my degree would not qualify me for that.
Yep.
And because so much of my adult life was spent going to school, even with all my kids, I was going to school for a few years. I just didn't have it in me to go back and get a more advanced
Keep
degree.
going. Yeah.
But I
Well,
mean, I always liked it. Listen, I'm listening to what you say and how you look at life and being story driven. I mean, people's lives, they interest me. I also like to help people if I can.
yep.
Um, my husband thinks that I spend most of my life trying to fix him. Um, but
I've got a wife like that.
I haven't been that successful. I'm still trying.
Good luck. Men are very simple creatures.
Yeah, he became really nervous when I moved to theater producing. Like all my need for having people to work on was going to be directed at him.
Oh, I love it. Oh, I wonder, Jennifer, are you still an active board member of New York Stage and Film? There's others too, 18 by
Well,
vote and the Peace
I'll
Story.
tell you, there's three boards that I'm on, and
Yeah.
I've been on New York Stage and Film is a nonprofit theater company excuse me, that's aim is it's the early stage of development, which very few theater nonprofits do. Mostly they do things later stages. So we're like the breeding ground. It's a wonderful company for people who are trying to figure out what their work is about.
Right.
We have a summer season every year for about 6 weeks. And I mean, a lot of work has gone on to Broadway, off Broadway, and regional theater. I mean, it's almost 40 years of development, and it's amazing company and what's come out of it. Because when people come there, it's not about pleasing the audience; it's about pleasing the writer who comes there, and what their needs are, and the audience there. They've been trained. They love to be part of that early development phase. So
Yeah.
it's a win-win for everybody. And then the other two, one of them is called the Peace Studio, and that's an amazing organization because the goal of that is to support artists within their communities of all types of media. I mean, when I say artists, it could be any type of
Could
artist.
be anything.
Yeah, who find ways of spreading peace kind of in the broadest sense of the word within their
Mm-hmm.
communities. So it's for healing, it's for bullying, it's for all sorts of things. And that's what our world needs right now.
Absolutely. It certainly does.
Yeah, and my other one is something that's very close to my heart because when I grew up, when you turned 21, you couldn't wait to go register to vote. Now, because of what's happened in our country, and it probably started with Nixon, which is a long time ago, where people started to be disillusioned with government.
Yep.
There's very little sense of why vote? What does it matter? I mean, there isn't a sense of people, a pride in being a citizen. And 18 by Vote is an effort that's run by young people who know how to reach young people. And it's trying to get young people to register to vote. And first you got to get them to register, and then you got to get them to vote. And they're very turned off right now. So it's actually what I've learned in the process of that nonprofit and the other one, which is the Peace Studio, is that in order to be effective, it's very grassroots. You got to go out and reach people one-to-one.
Yep.
And help them see what's at stake for them. Why do you want to vote? What are the issues that directly relate to you? Do you care about the climate?
All those
Are you
things.
a woman? Do you care about, the issues with abortion and everything else? So it's really very personal, very grassroots, which makes it hard. I mean, it's not like you can have Taylor Swift sing the right song and everybody's going to go register. Would that it were that easy.
Oh, it would be a wonderful world we would live in, that's for sure. But I'd love to shift gears, and thank you again for sharing, into your writing. Now, when was the first time that you put pen to paper, and why was it? What was the catalyst that led you to start writing at all?
Well, I think I've always thought in terms of stories. And when I said to you that I've always been attracted to differences and stuff, I feel like personality-wise, I get along with most people. There's a few I don't, but mostly I get along with people. But I'm somewhat of an outsider. I don't have a group per se.
Right. Yeah.
I like all different people for all different reasons, and so I feel like I've always kind of been like the little girl looking in the window.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of stories. I mean, so I think I've always written. If something's bothering me in my life, I go to my computer and I write about it.
Right.
It helps me think, believe it or not. In fact, my handwriting is very bad. I cannot do it by handwriting. I think on my computer. And I think the first thing I did when I was in my late 20s, I had written a couple of articles for a local magazine. So I started to get my feet wet that way, because I've always liked to write. And I really liked doing it, but I had my youngest children at that time were like 3 and 4, and I'd go up, the kids would drop them off at school, I would start to work on it, and next thing you know, I had to pick them up. I mean, it was very frustrating. So in my head, it's like either get rid of the kids or do something else. So I kept my children, and I decided to move on. I just figured it's not the time of my life to be doing this. But I've always written, and then when I was a family therapist, and particularly when I was a divorce mediator, I wrote for family professional journals. I wrote a few articles. I also I co-wrote a book chapter on divorce in a family therapy textbook. It was called The Family Life Cycle, and it was when I was doing mediation. So it's like, but that's, it's all different types of writing. So the more creative writing thing I did, I wrote a film with one of my sons in the 1990s, and we filmed. It's on Amazon Prime Video. It's called Family Blues.
Yes.
And I had produced that as well, and I was, I'm a do-it-yourselfer, so I didn't have much craft, I have to confess. We just kind of wrote it according to what we thought it needed to be. And then the director, she kind of holed us up in a room for like 2 weeks. And we started working on the story. And it was like, not a master's course, but certainly maybe a bachelor's level course.
Well aware.
And I've since then, I've always been, I kind of moonlight doing it, but I need to be creative. I mean, when I'm producing and I'm, trying to raise money and stuff. I mean, I love the projects and I love being part of things, but it doesn't have the same, doesn't fill my creative need.
No.
And so I don't know. As I say, I've gotten into writing musicals. I mean, I just hopscotch all over the place, but
I have to write. Simple as that.
but the musicals that we wrote, the first one I did where I wound up with the team that I work with now, Dan Martin and Michael Biello, and we have such a good time working together. And that was based on a movie that John and I had written that we didn't know what to do with. At one point, I think the title was Four Bare Legs in a Bed, which doesn't make any sense at all.
I love it.
Anyway, and then I kept thinking maybe this is a musical. John was the one who thought that maybe it's a musical. Anyway, I wound up for different reasons. I wound up having to write the book of it because I did, and when I got the composer team I needed, and that's something. I mean, it's like I plunge in.
Yep.
What's the expression? Fools rush in. Well, maybe I'm a fool, but I'm not.
But you also burn the boats. If you're going to do it, you do it 100%, don't you?
Well, I mean, I really work very hard at what I do. And
Yep.
and the screenwriting, I've written several screenplays. And the one that's right now that's in production was based on a book I optioned in 2014. So in the entertainment business, a lot of things you do take forever to happen, and maybe they never happen.
No.
It's so much you do. It's like on spec. And so that was a very long process of getting
Of
done.
discovery.
Yeah, and the book actually, they're all different. I mean, it's really, again, that was another thing. I mean, my whole life, I have to say, I guess, has been learning as I do. I'm a more instinctual person. It's not, good or bad. That's who I am.
Just the way it is. Now, tell me something. I'd love to, before I lose my track of thought here, you talked about the Four Legs in the Bed or whatever the title was. I wonder, where did you come up for the wonderful name called Alpha Bette? And I'd love for you to not only explain that for me, but tell us a little bit about what the book is about.
Thank you. Well, Alpha Bette took me a very long time to come up with that title, a long time. I felt like I had to have a really good title. The book is about an old woman. She's 95. She's a widow. And it all takes place over the course of a day. And all the characters who are in it each have his or her own point of view. So it's one of these books that is done with multiple points of view. And they're all she makes that morning, makes a decision. Something happens and she makes it, she takes as a sign from her husband who's dead. It's like he's connecting her. He's reached out to her in some way. And she makes a decision to give a dinner party that night, and nobody knows why. And the people that she invites, she has a daughter and her husband. She has a great-granddaughter who has a boyfriend. And then she has a couple of neighbors. One is a nasty woman who is my favorite character to write. One is a young Iranian neighbor. And then she has a Croatian night aide and a housekeeper. So it's a very small group who are at that party. Plus, she invites a medium. And that's that's also, the medium only has a couple of chapters. She's kind of peripheral. But the fact that everybody knows a medium is coming to this dinner party makes everybody very uneasy.
I bet. I can tell, it seems to be volumetric. Is this something that you intend to expand on? Do you have another book waiting?
Well, I do, but let me just a little bit more
absolutely.
about
these
people.
Absolutely.
As each person has their own, each person, while it all happens over the course of the day, you do find out about their own personal history.
Right.
For different means, you find out, you really have a good sense of who these people are. And when you ask me how I came up with the title, the old lady is pretty darn controlling. I mean, she's going to be controlling till her last breath. And so at some point with coming up with the title, Alpha came, Alpha's an easy one. I mean, and then her name, I've given her 50 different names over the course of writing it. And it just came to me, it's got to be Alpha Bette. I just struck me as a title.
It's such a great, oh, wow, that's awesome.
So that's how it came to me. And one of the character in the book who's the very unpleasant across the way neighbor, I don't know, there's something about her that I just have fun writing. And so she's going to be the main character in the next novel that I'm working on, and
Yep.
we'll get to know her better. And she has a very the trajectory. It'll be quite different. Writing from different points of view, I feel in a way was easier for me because this is my first. I never thought in my life I could write a novel. I took a friend of mine who's a writer had suggested I take like a little 2 hours a week, every other week, a little class she was giving in narrative writing. And I figured, well, okay, let me see if I can do it. I figured if I can write a 500-page story, I deserve an award. And when I found out that to write a novel, it has to be a minimum of like 60,000 words.
60,000, yes, it's a big one.
Oh, yeah. Never thought I could do it. Never.
But
and by having different characters, in a way, I feel like it was probably an easier way for me to ease my way into novel writing, because the next one is really primarily the old lady. I mean, this difficult neighbor.
Yes, yeah, because I did read in your bio that it actually did explain and introduce different characters, and it's a fascinating breakdown. And the fact that you've got a book underway for that particular character is going to be very interesting the way it unfolds.
Well, one or two of the other characters will be in it, but it's not their story, so to speak. It's going to be,
yep.
But it all, it's all happens. These people are all in the same building practically. And
Yep.
it's very, in fact, New York City is almost a character. It's a very New York City story in an apartment building, which is a wonderful old pre-war apartment building. And in fact, I used my parents' apartment in my head as a model for it.
Oh, there you go. Isn't it funny how, our imagination and our experiences in life manifest into this wonderful product called Alpha Bette? Now, I wonder, are you going to have it in different formats? Is it audio book or written?
Yeah, oh, sure. It's a paperback.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get it in a bookstore at this time unless a bookstore orders it, which they can. But It's on paperback, it's on Kindle, and it's an Audible book. The Audible version just came out.
I love Audible.
Yeah. Well, it's
fan.
easy. If you drive a lot, Audible is great.
Yeah.
And there was something I wanted to say about, but I forgot what it was. But anyway, I feel like it's a story it's a love story in a way. This woman really loved her husband.
Mm-hmm.
It's about flawed characters, it's about healing, it's about relationships in general, and how, I mean, everybody in this book who's a main character has something that needs kind of a resolution in some way, or so that everybody has a character arc that's important, and it's all somehow related to the old lady. And it's also, in fact, I had worked with a developmental editor as well before I sent it to this publisher, because she really was very helpful to me, because I am of the belief that with writing, it takes a village. You work with, you get feedback from other people. To me, if you just do it in isolation, you have no perspective at all on what you've done. So
yes.
I have a lot of people who've, helped me with this in different ways. But one of the things that she had suggested, which I hadn't done, and it was a great suggestion, was that I find a way to link all the different characters in the book to the dead husband of the old lady. So he's kind of like, they all have, it's not like he appears as a ghost, but he has a presence in the lives of all the people as they talk about their stories.
Yeah, so spiritually he is there. Now, I'm wondering, we could only ever touch the surface of this wonderful book. Now, if anybody, Jennifer, wants to access this book, can they find, in fact, and learn more about you? Where are they going to go? Well,
I have a website, which is, it's, the HTTPS /
Yes.
It doesn't need www.
No.
And then it's just my name, Jennifer Manocherian. Do you want me to spell it?
No, I can provide the link.
Oh, jennifermanocherian.net. And on my website, actually on the homepage of my website, it has my book, but it also, the picture in the back of it is actually of my parents' apartment.
Oh.
It's a very personal book to me. There are things, it's not autobiographical, and yet there's so much in there that actually is, my husband's listening to it on Audible. He hadn't read it. And it's almost like I'm hearing it for the first time.
Oh, it's very.
And realizing things that I really drew from in my life. There's this scene of the old man, George, at one point, the dead husband, who he's hospitalized for something. And I took that right out of something that happened to my father. You know, there's a lot of things that I took from my life, and yet it's not autobiographical.
No, but it's somehow interwoven within this wonderful book. Now, again, if you're on this call today, as I've mentioned, we can only scratch the surface of the depth of this book, and I highly recommend that you go to the website that Jennifer's just mentioned. I will be making sure that the links to it are available below this post. No matter where you find this interview, you are definitely going to be able to find the links back to Jennifer and this book. So, with all that being said,
I have a lot of the reviews that are on that website too.
Absolutely. And again, take a look around. Yeah, there's lots to learn there. You've got news reviews, you've got about the author, you've got other projects that are going on. So much great information all in one location.
Thank you.
So if everybody, again, if you're on this call today and you want some more information, I'll be making sure that link's available to you. So with all that being said, Jennifer, this has been just a fabulous call. Thank you very much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you for having me. This was lovely.